The Murder Shelf Book Club contains disturbing content related to real-life crimes. Listener discretion is advised. Setting boundaries is not about being selfish or uncaring. It is about preserving your mental and emotional well-being. By learning to say no when necessary, you show that you won't allow others to take advantage of you. When we set clear boundaries, we are saying yes to creating a safer life. In God We Trust, Everyone Else Gets a Background Check by Morrison. Well, welcome to the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast. I am your host, Jill. This is episode 98. Lori Morrison's books on safety and faith. We are so fortunate to have my friend, my mentor, Lori Morrison, with us today. Lori is a private investigator and the host of the Unlovely Truth podcast, which is an intersection of faith and true crime. That may not be the most obvious pairing, but believe me, it is insightful, educational, and much more. I first met Lori at CrimeCon Nashville in 2018. We were both working with private investigator Sheila Wysocki on the Jonathan Cruz case, and then worked together on the Lauren Taylor Agee case, then Christian Andreacchio's suspicious death, and then the deaths of Katie and River Major. So Lori and I go back a while. You might be familiar with some of those cases. But anyway, Sheila and Lori encouraged me, taught me, inspired me, and helped me hone my skills. I would never be hosting my own true crime podcast without their influence. Lori has remained a steadfast and true friend, and The Unlovely Truth is a favorite podcast of mine, and I encourage you to listen as well. Now, Lori has published a number of books which deal with safety in this chaotic world, and how we can all become PIs. That is, a person of impact. Oh, I love that. Passionate about justice, her books are Reclaiming Sanctuary, Enhancing Physical, Emotional, and Spiritual Safety in Our Churches. How needed is that? Also, Overcoming Fear and Worry. Her third was How to Kick Fear to the Curb. And In God We Trust, Everyone Else Gets a Background Check. I love that. I laughed so loud. All right, now this is a first. I have not read all of these books, and I know I really must be slipping, but I did read In God We Trust, Everyone Else Gets a Background Check, because the title is common sense by itself. So be assured, I am going to defer to Lori and let her tell us all how to be safer and become PIs, persons of impact. So, moving along, let me introduce you to Lori Morrison.
Hey, Jill.
Lori Morrison, I want to welcome you to the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast.
I am so excited to be here with you, Jill.
I really want to hear all about your books.
Yes.
Tell me everything. Tell me, how did you start doing this? How did you start writing the books? Because I think they're genius.
Oh, well, thank you. Really, I just saw something that I thought would be covered by other people. And I was looking and I just wasn't seeing it. And so I decided to create those resources myself because, you and I have known each other for years. And you know that I was doing a podcast, and it was from a faith angle because that's just who I am. But it was just crime in general, not unlike yours. And I really felt like I just kept seeing more and more in the church world that we were kind of refusing to open our eyes, kind of refusing to realize that we needed to be more situationally aware, to be more just proactive in taking care of things. And so my first book, even though it has a faith angle to it, it's really just safety tips for different areas of your life. How to stay safe in your home, when you're out traveling, when you're on vacation, when you're in a group, when you're at work, just all these different areas. And I integrated the faith angle because I wanted people to not be afraid. I wanted them to come from a place of power. I'm informed. I know how to take care of myself. And the Bible does tell us over and over and over, do not fear, do not fear, do not fear. So I worked that in.
So you're providing a comfort zone, a kind of that safe place, while you're giving people tips on how to be safer. Because if you're telling people you have to be safer, that's because there's things you need to be safe from.
Exactly. I mean, you can just turn on the news for 10 seconds and you can realize that we're living in an increasingly chaotic world. People just are breaking boundaries left and right about what is acceptable behavior toward other people. You have something I want, I will just take it from you. That stuff has always been happening, but it just seems to be ramping up, or at least we're more aware of it, which is a good thing. I know it's not fun stuff to think about, but when you look at it from the angle of, I am not only protecting myself, but I'm learning things that I can pass on to other people. So I can help the people that I love be safer as well. And don't we all want that?
Yes. Yes. I know I always try to teach some kind of lesson, drawing from whatever the book I happen to be covering, but some kind of lesson.
And that's what I love about your podcast.
Well, thank you. I don't want to I'm not audible where I'm just repeating the story, but I'm trying to have a goal. Like this last book I just did was about self-defense versus homicide, castle doctrine, that type thing. Yeah. Where is the line there? Well, it's different in every state. If you had asked me, what is the castle doctrine? What are the laws in Pennsylvania? Oblivious. I had no idea. And I'm aware of true crime. God forbid something happens. Not that you were going to pull out your law book and, check it in the middle of someone breaking in your house or something.
Right.
But you should have some kind of idea on something like this. Self-defense is, you're allowed to do that with limits. So I tried to teach those lessons.
Yes. And that's perfect. The way you described that so succinctly, with limits. We do have to know what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do. And I think that's why I am so big on proactivity. What can we do to lessen the chances that someone will see us as a good target? So you talk about somebody breaking into your home. I put very simple tips like make sure there's good lighting. If you don't have good street lighting, contact your city, your county, whoever is in charge of your jurisdiction and say, hey, let's get some lighting out here because it's a safety issue. If you can't afford a home alarm, I know a lot of people can't or don't want to mess with them, keep your key fob by your nightstand or on your nightstand by your bedside. And then if you think somebody's breaking in, hit that alarm button on your car.
Yes.
That noise, 99% of the time, is going to scare them off. They want easy targets. So just make yourself as difficult a target as you possibly can.
Right. I was just reading in one of your books, I think it was literally pulling out my Kindle, How to Kick Fear to the Curb. I think you were saying something about burglars, that, we have this image of them sneaking in the dead of night, and stalking around our house. And you said, no, they rob your house between 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. because people are at work, or they used to be.
True. Or they're out running errands or they're doing something. Usually if we're going to be gone, it's during the day, not during the middle of the night. That I'm just going down the street, I won't worry locking up. No, lock up, close your windows. Don't make it easy for them to get in. And I think one of the most disturbing things that they will do is they will watch the newspaper for death notices. They'll see when the funeral's going to be because they know you're not going to be home when your loved one is having the funeral. So just something simple like asking a neighbor, park your car in my driveway while I'm gone, please. Turn lights on and leave the TV on. Make it look and seem like somebody is there because they don't want to mess with people if they don't have to.
Yeah. Just want to steal your stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If you get a violent one, the key fob thing is a great idea.
Yeah. Or, have a very loud whistle, have something that is going to attract other people's attention because they don't want to have to deal with that. I know I can give you a code I have from She's Birdie. It's a personal alarm. So you can carry that with you. Let's say you're walking somewhere unfamiliar. Somebody gets a little too close to you, set that thing off.
When I happen to be like walking, I walk like I am a gargantuan. And the shoulders are moving and my chest is down, and I'm, and I usually keep my purse now on the inside of my jacket, things like that too, to be safer. I'll tell you a quick story. I was recording down in my basement in my studio, and hubby was at work, and I'm recording away, and I hear footsteps like on the wood, walking across the room, and I'm like, whoa. I grabbed my cell phone, I started to call 911, and I went, wait, let me check and make sure that hubby didn't come home. But I am cowering in the corner. I've got a pen between my hands with the point ready. Whoever, God help them, came in that door. And I hear the footsteps coming down the stairs. And I'm like frantically texting. I'm like, are you home? I'm like shaking because he's at work. It's noon. And he texts, says, yeah, I'm going to do some data analysis. And I was like,
text me and let me know.
And he says, oh, well, I knew you were recording. So I didn't bother calling you because I didn't want to call you in the middle of recording. Sweet, dear, considerate man he was, but I lost one of my 9 lives. That's for sure. Oh,
yeah, that's the difference between men and women. I've talked about this with my husband. I said, men don't understand what it's like to have to constantly be kind of scanning your surroundings and your environment for threats.
Yeah.
I said, when you're walking from the store to your car, doesn't even occur to you that someone might be watching you, might be approaching you. And he's like, well, you're right. Why would I think that? I said, we always think that.
Always. Or we should be. Situational awareness people.
I think one of the biggest faults we have as women is we can be too trusting. And that's why I wrote my second book. It's called In God We Trust. Everybody else gets a background check. But we kind of go the other way. We're like, oh, unless somebody, comes after me with a knife, I'm going to assume that they're wonderful people, especially if they happen to have a, quote unquote, trustworthy title, doctor, teacher, police, lawyer, pastor, whatever it is. But we need to know that what's important is that we trust in character over titles. And you and I talked about this earlier. Who people are leaks out. They can have a facade, they can have a mask, but who they truly are leaks out. So when you say, well, I was so surprised that so-and-so made this type of comment. No, that is something where you say, is that their real character leaking out? Are they telling me who they really are? And people will tell you who they really are. So we need to listen to them.
Yeah, I was just going to say when people tell you who they are, we need to believe them.
Yes.
When they make some kind of remark, you're right, there's Swiss cheese there and it's leaking out what they're really doing. When is the last time we had a serial killer arrested and everybody in the neighborhood said, I knew he was the killer. I knew it. I called tips in. And no, the comment is what? Well, he might not have been the friendliest soul, but he's just a normal guy. And, I'm shocked. In my neighborhood, I can't believe
cats all disappeared right after he moved in. I mean, I have to give credit to this. Her name's Tara. Her mother had been attacked, but it's from Dear John, the podcast. And I think
Tara Newell.
Tara Newell. She was describing her mother, and she said, when she sees red flags, she thinks that means there's a parade close by.
Oh boy.
And so, we have to get over that mentality. And we also have to realize that things are cumulative. All of us are going to, at some point, do or say something inappropriate. But when it happens, and then it happens again, when you've got a, bouquet of red flags,
yeah,
you have to start saying, this needs some evaluation. I really need to look at this a little more closely. And your trust is a precious, precious thing. It should only be given after someone has shown that they deserve it. Now, that doesn't mean that we just run around being paranoid and we think that everybody's out to get us or anything like that. But that deep trust of letting someone into your circle, that needs to be earned.
That also tells me that time is involved here. I see so many young people rushing into relationships. Mm-hmm. How many times do you hear this on these documentaries that so-and-so met and they fell in love and he's such a great guy and she's so wonderful, and 3 months later they're living together.
Right.
You live together. I don't care if you live together, but I'm sorry, you're right. You have to earn the trust.
Anybody can fake it for 3 months because that's in their best interest. They're drawing you in. And when they're hiding things about themselves, it's because they know those are questionable areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Take your time. Let the relationship season.
Yes.
Let it mature. Get past the puppy love stage. Because I'm sorry, you can't trust anything in that puppy love stage. You can't.
No. And I heard the most fabulous advice yesterday. This man was talking about exactly these types of relationships. And he said, when I hear a woman say, I've never even seen him mad. He said, then you haven't been around him enough. You wait until you see how a person reacts when they're mad. He said, you need to know that ahead of time. You don't want to find that out after you've jumped in with both feet.
Yes, I think that's so critically important. So tell me about the recent book.
Yes, I'm very excited about this one because a very wise psychologist named Dr. Anna Salter had gone into prison, and she had done interviews with men who had specifically been convicted of some type of sex crime. And one of the questions that she asked them was, do you have a preferred victim type? And I think she was thinking either age or demographics or whatever. And they said, oh yeah, church people. And she was a little bit taken aback. And she said, well, why? And they said, well, because they tend to be very naive. So it's easier to operate the way I want to operate around them. And if they do figure out what I'm trying to do, all they want to do is forgive me.
Huh.
Yes, I see your jaw dropping. Mine did too. And I was just like, that is so true. That is so true. And so I wanted to put out some resource that churches could use to really do a more holistic look at church security and church safety, because a lot of the people that are speaking into this space, the vast, vast majority of them are men. And a lot of them have military or police backgrounds, which is great. They have great information, but they really tend to focus on outside threats that are coming in to do violence. And statistically, those are fairly rare. They do happen. We just saw one in the news this week in Australia. Yes. Absolutely horrific. So we do have to be prepared for those things. But we're much more likely to encounter, I can't tell you the number of stories of youth pastors abusing kids in their youth group, or treasurers stealing money because the appropriate safeguards and checks are not put in place. Saw one, I just put it on my podcast that dropped this week. This guy was using the church's Wi-Fi to download child porn. So that way it wasn't showing up on his, it wasn't trackable on his stuff. So he thought. They did end up finding it. But, these things are happening just right in our midst. And so again, back to that proactivity. It's always better to have a plan ahead of time. You know this as well as anybody. The midst of a crisis is not the time to figure out your plan to handle that crisis. Mm-hmm. You want to have a plan in place ahead of time. And so, just knowing trends like when you're talking about human trafficking, especially sex trafficking of young girls, what do you think the number one fastest growing type of recruitment into that is? Because I think most of us think, of the windowless vans pulling up to somebody on a street corner and snatching them and throwing them in. It's other young women. These traffickers are using girls they've already trafficked and sending them out into the schools, into the church youth groups to draw others in. And so we have to stop saying that would never happen in my church. I've talked to multiple women who were trafficked by their own family members who attended church regularly. And don't say, well, that must have been that kind of church, not mine, because I'm telling you, it's everywhere. Let's look at the Catholic Church. Let's look at the Southern Baptist Convention. Absolutely infested with sex offenders.
Yes.
And I'm not saying these things because I don't like the church. I love the church. I want her to function the way she's supposed to. I want the shepherds of the flock to protect their sheep the way Scripture tells us we're supposed to.
Doesn't it say something like, watch out for false prophets? They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. I don't know all my Bible quotes, but I remember that one.
Yes. And I'll tell a little personal story here if we have a couple of moments.
Oh, go.
I was on a church staff when I was in my early 30s. Been a while. But one day, a man came into the church during the week, because we had a lot going on during the week there as well. And I recognized him as my 6th grade teacher who had been, unfortunately, not fired. He was allowed to resign, but he had been caught attempting to molest one of my classmates. And he did grooming behaviors, testing behaviors on a lot of us. And so it wasn't just this one-off, one time. He was a pedophile. So he comes into the church and he goes in and he has an appointment with my boss, our head pastor. And so I'm, of course, kind of panicking. What does this guy want here? And so after he leaves, I go in to talk to my boss and I said, look, if he was here for personal counseling, that's none of my business and we don't need to talk about it. I said, but I also know that he has gone around to different churches because he had horses and little ponies and stuff and tried to use that as an entree into, hey, I'll come to your children's event, I'll come to your family event, whatever. I said, we need to not allow that to happen because the man is a pedophile. And he just kind of looked at me and he said, well, Lori, God can forgive anything. I said, well, yeah, he can. But that doesn't mean we need to invite this man into a situation where he has proven himself untrustworthy. And he said, well, it sounds to me maybe like you're the one with the problem.
Oh, my heaven.
Let that sit there for a minute. And so it was obvious I was not going to get anywhere with this guy. And so I said, okay, that's fine. But I will tell you this. If we have any kind of event for families or kids and he is invited to do his little pony rides or to do whatever, I said, I will personally contact every family in this church. And I will tell them what the man is. And I will tell them that you knew and let him come anyway.
There you go.
So I wish I had gone a step further and gone to the elders and said, look, this man, his leadership capabilities are in question because of this.
Wow.
But eventually he was a smart guy. And eventually he let the church know that we were moving in a different direction and that I had always known that my position was temporary and now it was time to move on. All lies. But people believed him because he was the pastor. And I even had an elder's wife come up to me and say, I think there's more to this, but I don't want to know what it is. And I thought, well, then you are welcome to the church that you've got.
That's terrifying.
It is. It's horrible. And it happens more than we realize. And so I wanted to not only give people the tools, here are things to look for, here are things to put in place to hopefully minimize different types of risks, but to also say, we just need to know this happens. It happens a lot more than you would want to think.
I know you can't speak for all churches, when they are hiring people, do they do background checks?
They should, and I'm sure a lot do. But a lot of times, oh, well, this person came highly recommended by this person whom I trust. And especially if you're in a denomination, they're super tight with each other. And again, I've done so many podcast interviews with people and the books that you and I read where they say, if someone had just called the last place this person worked, but they don't, because we trust. And these people know how to be charming. They know how to put you at ease. And they've got almost this sixth sense of knowing who will believe them.
Their brains are wired differently than ours. And we do. We meet people and they seem very nice and they're charming and we think they're wonderful. And I've gotten to the point when I meet that wonderful, charming person, I'm a little jaded because I know psychopaths are wonderful and charming and funny. And it's not that I won't be your friend. I certainly will. But again, that earning trust, that charming person is a red flag to me. I don't say everyone has to go that far, but it is because I know better.
Even if someone doesn't really cross the line over into being a psychopath, a narcissist can do unbelievable amounts of damage. And so that's why I talk about, we have to have a plan for physical safety, but we have to have a plan for emotional and spiritual safety as well. Because those people might even not do anything criminal, but they might be incredibly abusive.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, there's so much to watch out for. It's just terrifying.
There is, but that's why, again, I want to have people not read this out of fear, but out of, I want to have that knowledge. I want to be, if I can use kind of an overused word, empowered. I want to be ready. I want to be discerning. I want to recognize this stuff when I see it. Because I always tell people, how sometimes you'll meet somebody and like you said, they're charming, they're all the things, but there's just some little nagging thing in your gut. We tamp that down and we shouldn't. We need to explore that. Why am I feeling this way? What did they do that made me feel this way? And to me, for people who are people of faith, that's the Holy Spirit giving you a little bit of wisdom and saying, pay attention to this.
Yeah, I always say trust your gut. And I want you to know, research is telling us we are now able to biologically identify what that little nagging sixth sense is. We have a dual perception in our brains, the way they function, where you and I are sitting here having a conversation and I'm listening to you. But there is another perception, very subliminal below that. And that's what begins poking at us when you go, yeah, I just don't like Bob. I don't know what it is. The hair on the back of my neck went up. We can now prove with studies and science that that is a thing. Mm-hmm. It is there to protect us. It is the Holy Spirit. It is saying, hey, something's happening here. The problem is with human beings, we can't identify why, because it's subliminal. It's below our level of consciousness, but it is still a very real thing. So, you know what? Don't hang out with Bob.
Right.
The church picnic, I don't have to sit at Bob's table. But you have to trust that. By the way, we are the only creatures on the planet that don't trust that.
That's right. That is exactly right. I think something else that goes right along with that situational awareness, that listening to our guts, is boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There are people who will continually push and even smash normal boundaries. And those are people you really have to watch out for. So someone that you barely know, he's put his hand on your shoulder. Okay, that's really a boundary that most people are going to understand not to do. And so you need to enforce that boundary. Step out from under that hand and move. Make it very clear that that is not something you're okay with. Teach your children that it's okay for them to do that. I hate it when people say, oh, you give Uncle Tommy a hug. Well, if there's something in your child's system and being that's telling them that they don't want to do that, don't override that. If Uncle Tommy gets offended, he's an adult. He'll get over it. Just say, oh, we're not in a huggy mood today, whatever. But do not make your child do that. And the same thing at church, oh, well, that's just Brother Jim or Sister Sue or whatever. No, listen to your children and allow them to set their own boundaries for their personal space. And that's another lesson if we go back to pedophiles. They will not only test those children, they will test the parents. You're standing there with your child and I come up and I put my hands on your child's shoulder. Not only do they want to see if the kid's okay with that, they want to know if the parents are okay with that. So when you're showing them that you just kind of overlook that stuff, they're going to keep pushing. Okay, I breached that boundary. Let's try the next one.
Did you watch any of the Jan Broberg documentaries?
Yes.
What were they? Abducted in Plain Sight. Mm-hmm. Another one was Friend of the Family. And it is so mind-blowing. There were no boundaries in that. If you're not aware, murder bookies, Jan Broberg was the young girl whose family befriended the new neighbors, and Bob Berchtold was the father in this family, and he has his wife and children. And Bob just becomes, part of the family. Long story short, he winds up abducting Jan. They flee down to Mexico. I think she's 13, marries her, tells her this insane story about how she can't share any of this with anybody else, and sexually abuses the child. He also compromises the parents.
Yes.
And uses his leverage over them so he can molest their daughter. And it is mind-blowing. And I understand it always starts with this little disclaimer about how, there was so much more trust back in the 60s and 70s.
Boy, not in my household.
But not like this. And I hate to criticize the victims. It's just that, no, this person should not have this kind of access to your children.
Right. The most disturbing part about the whole story was, he comes back, he's in trouble. He somehow convinces the parents that as part of his therapy to get over having these inappropriate urges, he needs to spend even more time with their daughter. You know what? You're not responsible for this man and his health. And they were like, well, we wanted to help. No, we do not have to help everybody that asks us. We do not have to answer every question that gets asked of us. We do not have to perform every action that is asked of us. We don't say no nearly enough.
Yeah. Talk about being naive. And again, this person very quickly was given that trust that should have been allowed to season. And when he did these questionable things, violated boundaries, they cooperated. And when they had the chance to prosecute, the parents dropped the case. Mm-hmm. I understand that not everybody wants to go down a legal route, but if you're not going to choose that path, then please protect your child yourself.
It's not about blame. It's about protection. It's about learning lessons so that we can be proactive.
And again, that's why I'm bringing up the case. I'm struggling with it, but I'm really being cautious to really not be critical of the parents because they have enough guilt of their own to deal with. Sure. They do not need me adding on to the pile.
And they were victims too.
They were. But please use your advocacy for your own children and protect them.
And we have to remember that children just simply don't have the life experience, the brain maturity to be able to assess these situations the way adults can. And so you have to understand, well, if my child's being bothered by someone, they'll tell me. Well, they might not, because you don't know what this abuser or potential abuser, if they're in the grooming stage, you don't know what they're telling your child. I'll hurt your pets. I'll hurt your family. No one will believe you. These people are good at what they do. And that's why the average pedophile, and this is an old statistic, but it can't have changed that much. I'm going to make you guess. I always do this to people and they're always shocked. How many times do you think the average pedophile offends? Might be multiple victims, might be the same victim, multiple times. How many times do you think they offend before they're caught and they're prosecuted and they're put in jail?
Well, I don't think a lot of them are prosecuted and put in jail. So
a lot of people will tell me, oh, you're going to say some really big number like 15. I'm like, no, I'm going to say a really big number like 117.
Yeah, there you go.
They're good at what they do. They threaten their victims, or they convince their victims that they're in love, but nobody will understand. A lot of times in the churches, they will misuse and twist scripture. You have to have conversations with your kids. Don't always wait for them to come disclose. Just say, hey, anything going on that you're concerned about, or bring up a story you read or a podcast you listened to and say, wow, I can see how this might have happened to this person. Can you give them an easy way to understand that you're going to be a safe person to talk to, that they're not horrible people? Because a lot of times the abusers will blame them. Well, if you hadn't done X or done Y, I worked in a probation department where we had an offender who actually blamed his, I believe she was 7-year-old victim that he had molested, because as he said, she seduced him. Yes, a 7-year-old, because she knew what she was doing, parading around in that Mickey Mouse nightgown. Well, I'm sorry, but the words Mickey Mouse nightgown should have given him a big clue. But, these kids, they don't understand. They can't process what's happening to them. So you have to make it as easy as possible and as safe as possible for them to disclose to you, if in fact there is anything to disclose.
Well, they don't want to get in trouble either.
Right. And they've been told that they will.
And they don't want to disappoint. And they don't want to make a problem. Not every family home is having a blissful experience. So if you already have economic tensions or discord in the house, the last thing you want to do is climb on that heap and say, oh, by the way, this happened.
Yes. And please, 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 churchgoers, don't let a female victim be interrogated by a panel of men.
Yes.
That is so unfair. They're not going to want to talk, especially in front of a bunch of men that they may not even hardly know. Our culture is too engaged in victim blaming, slut shaming. I talked about on my podcast just this week a pastor who stood up in the pulpit during a sermon. And I don't know what point he thought he was making, but he basically said that if he was on a jury and a man had been accused of rape, he would not vote to convict him if the victim had been wearing shorts.
What?
Yeah. Like that has anything to do with anything.
What?
I know. 2024, and this kind of garbage is still happening. And so you have to understand how incredibly difficult it is for victims to come forward.
Well, you had me at don't let a female victim talk to a panel of men. Like if my child or me or someone is a victim, I'm going to go talk to the police. I don't need to talk to the elders who are not a law enforcement agency. That is a crime.
Yeah, a lot of churches, we're going to handle this in-house. No.
I got to tell you this story very quickly. So I'm a retired teacher, and teaching in high school, a young man came in and for whatever reason, walked into the middle of my class and was threatening me. I had some special needs students in that particular class. They were being mainstreamed. They got extremely agitated and upset. And, this young man was known to be violent, a serious troublemaker. He wasn't even my student. I said, okay. So I called the office. I said, I need a substitute and I need someone to work with the special needs kids to calm them down. And they're like, what happened? I said, we'll talk in a minute. They sent someone down. I went upstairs to the office and I explained what happened. And the vice principal is sitting there. He goes, well, that's ridiculous. I'll talk to him and And I said, no, you don't understand. I said, I don't care what our little handbook says. He threatened violence against me. I'm on my way to the police station, and his jaw dropped to the ground. Parents whose children are being bullied, stop talking to the principal. Go to the police department and report a crime, because violent harassment like that is a crime. And as I'm talking to this young man's father, happened to be an attorney, he calls in. He wants to speak to me. I said, tell him I'm going to the police station to report a crime committed against me, and I will refer him to my attorney. And it was handled that way. The police filed verbal assault charges. I wound up putting it on record.
You have to.
And the thing was, if he looked at me sideways, keyed my car, glanced at me, I would have had him arrested. And guess what? He did not do any of those things. But how many times had he been suspended, and where he's home watching TV, having a good time, sleeping in, no, that was not going to happen with me, because a crime is a crime. So stop talking to the principal and go talk to your police department.
And same thing with churches. You have to understand, for your jurisdiction, when you're a mandated reporter, you have no choice. When we're talking about minors, you may have a legal obligation to go to the police. Now, I would say the moral obligation should already be pushing people that way, but that doesn't always occur to people. So we have to protect people better. We are so worried about, how can we help this offender, which is great. They need help, clearly. But we trample over the victims in our zeal to help the offender. We have to be there for both of them. And honestly, helping the offender may not be possible until that offender has paid some secular consequences. And I think, too, in the church world especially, and really in other areas, we equate forgiveness with restoration. We want to forgive this person. We feel like we have to forgive this person. And that's great. We can forgive. We can let go of bitterness and anger and wanting a certain punishment. But that doesn't mean we put them right back where they can do the exact same thing when they have not shown that they're sorry. They have not made any effort to manage that behavior, because these people cannot turn it around on their own, or they would. They need some intensive help. And so we're not doing people any favors when we just sweep things under the rug.
No, it only makes a big pile under the rug, which you wind up tripping over.
Yes.
It seems like such common sense to me, but anymore, common sense is a superpower.
And I get that it's hard, especially if it's people that you know, again, people in certain positions that you think should be trustworthy, or you're maybe afraid that there'll be some retaliation, maybe not physically, but maybe you'll be ostracized in your little circle that this has happened in. So I get that it's hard. Please don't hear me say that anybody that has not come forward has done something wrong.
No.
What I am saying is you can find support. You can find the strength to unburden yourself and to help other people not have to go through what you did.
Exactly. There should be that support built in to these institutions.
Yes, there's a lot of that in my third book, which is called Reclaiming Sanctuary, Enhancing Physical, Emotional, and Spiritual Safety in Our Churches. But really that goes for any institution, like you're talking about schools. So in so many ways, teachers have just been hogtied in being able to deal with things effectively because schools are worried about lawsuits, or they're worried about, every child is worth saving. And they are. But that doesn't mean you leave an extremely disturbed child in the midst of basically a pool of victims for them.
Yeah, I can tell you another school story. Was coming out of the ladies' room at school, heading back to my classroom. And a young man burst into a fight with another young man, caught me. It was all the bad karma I've ever collected, but caught me in my jaw, snapped my head over to the left. I got punched in the ribs, and I wind up breaking up this fight, these two strapping 17-year-old, big kids. And eventually we get everybody to the office. And once again, they're like, oh, they hit you. Well, according to our handbook, I'm like, take the handbook. He assaulted me. Again, I'm going to the police station. And this time I pressed charges. And there was all kinds of, so-and-so's parents are going through a divorce. And I said, I'm really sorry about that. I said, and he absolutely needs some counseling. And he's still going to have to deal with the ramifications of punching me in the face. That was back in 2006. To this day, I am on medication for the damage done to my neck. The ligaments in the side of my face snapped. I have nothing holding my jaw in place. And I have to wear this appliance to keep my jaw connected to my skull because he was upset his parents were getting divorced.
A lot of people get upset when things happen, but that doesn't mean that they act out that way. And I do understand that a lot of people were not competing on a level playing field. They had so much in their past that it's a little more difficult for them. I do get that, and I'm not trying to minimize that. At the same time, just because you're wounded doesn't mean you're allowed to bleed all over everyone you come in contact with. You have to deal with that wound.
That's why I made them deal with the consequences. No, I said, you don't get to assault people. Right. And by the way, after that second incident, nobody messed with me.
I would imagine not.
Nobody messed with me. What lesson is that?
Exactly.
Take it in silence. I didn't care if they were going to be suspended. Oh, whoop-de-doo. No, you don't get to do that. There are consequences in this world. And hopefully they're better people because of this. And at the flip side, I didn't want to destroy their lives.
Well, I'm sure you helped them actually, in the long run, deal with things better.
I could have sued them civilly and been collecting my, payment over the last 25 years or something from them. And I didn't want to ruin their lives, but they were going to go to court. They were going to sit there. It was going to happen, and it did.
Well, and for all of our people of faith out there going, but forgiveness, but grace and all that, I want to tell a real quick story about Moses. Everybody knows who Moses is. When he was leading the Israelites through the wilderness, because they weren't allowed to go into the promised land quite yet, because they had been basically whining and complaining about absolutely everything and not trusting God.
Yeah.
They were at it again. They said, we don't have any water. Why are we on the desert? And so Moses interceded on their behalf, and God said, okay, if you speak to this rock, water will pour forth, because I want to take care of the needs of my people. And so Moses goes back, and the people are complaining even more. And so, being human, he gets all annoyed with them, as I would have. And he's standing there with his brother Aaron, and he says, do we have to basically do everything for you? And he takes his staff and he smacks the rock. Water comes forth. Everybody's got water. They should be happy. They're not. Well, God decides to have a word with Moses. And he says, look, I didn't tell you to strike the rock. I told you to speak to it. And you kind of claimed all the credit for taking care of the people when it was me. And so there's going to be some consequences, Moses. When it's time to enter the promised land, everybody else gets to and you don't. Now, God is still good. He still loved Moses, but Moses disobeyed. And so there had to be consequences. Now, God let him see the promised land. He wasn't just totally, I don't like you anymore, Moses. So, people of faith, I want you to listen to that and realize that it is okay to hold people in the church accountable. Yes. Hold people at work accountable. Hold people in the schools accountable. Hold people just in your social circle accountable. Family, I know that's really, really hard to have boundaries and stuff with family, but they have to be held accountable. and not necessarily for criminal behavior, but for abusive, narcissistic, unthoughtful, harmful behaviors.
Yes, exactly. Lori, you've given us a million different lessons already. Is there anything that you want to share before we wind down here?
I think I just want to really remind everybody and re-encourage them. It's okay to say no. It's okay to have boundaries. And it's okay to call people out when they refuse to respect those.
Amen. Lori Morrison, thank you so much. Can you please give us the name of your books again so my murder bookies can go out and buy them?
Yes. And by the way, gotta tell everybody, I'm a murder bookie too. So I'm one of you. Love all of the work that Jill does. You can get any of my books on Amazon. Probably the easiest way, because there is another author named Lori Morrison, and her stuff is way different than mine. Just type in Lori Morrison Reclaiming Sanctuary, and that'll probably pull up that first book. And then you can go to my author page, and all three of them are right there. So you don't have to remember all three names. And I'll send you a link. You can put a link in the show notes for people that want to look for that. And they're on sale now too. So now is the time to go get them.
Excellent.
I really just want to give people tools. You are all so much stronger than you give yourself credit for. You're smart, you're resourceful. And if you just have some tips and some tools, you can protect yourself and your loved ones.
Fantastic.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. I'm so glad to share wonderful books with my listeners. And these are well worth reading. I said I've now read 2 of them, working on the 3rd.
Awesome.
Absolutely wonderful tips, truly.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Jill.
We'll come up with another reason to do this again soon.
Oh, yes.
All right, Lori, thank you. I really appreciate it. Murder Bookies, I hope you learned a lot from this discussion with Lori Morrison about her books on safety, faith, and security, and not taking trust for granted. Thank you for listening. I see you as you hear me. Now, our next book comes from CrimeCon 2024, where I met Lindsay Wade, and my respect and my admiration for her knows no bounds. In My DNA was published in 2022. It's based on Lindsay's 21-year law enforcement career in the Tacoma region of Washington State. Now, her book isn't about a single case. She delves into the shocking sex crimes and homicides that are taking place. And we gain her unique perspective as a biracial female detective in a male-dominated profession. Please take a few minutes to leave an awesome review that helps me make new murder bookies. As always, especially about this episode, you can share your thoughts with me at jill@murdershelfbookclub.com or on Twitter X or Facebook or Instagram, or you can join Patreon for $4 a month. I have links to Lori's books on Amazon, on my blog, and anything else that we've discussed. There's so much going on in this episode at www.murdershelfbookclub.com. So please buy these. They are well worth the read. Always trust your gut and lock your doors and windows. Written and produced by Jill, all rights reserved.